thing I guess I'd like to get from tonight is what has already been done as far as investigating alternatives, and then I'd like to give some suggestions if they haven't been thought of. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, Camille, and then Melanie, please.
Hi, I'm Rebecca or Becca. And my interest in coming on board was that I hate to lose this wonderful gem in Maplewood's community, and I want to be able to help get it back up and running. I feel that environmental education is important, and the Maplewood Nature Center does such a wonderful job of facilitating environmental education and really working with schools and getting environmental ed and nature-based programming in school curriculum. So I want to be able to be there. My background is in environmental education. I've got a master's degree in it. And so I feel that, tonight I just want to get to know everybody a little bit better, and then also use some of the skills and tools that I have in environmental education and programming to get the Nature Center back in service. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Camille, Melanie, and then Jan, please.
Hi, I'm Camille Johnson. You can call me Cammie. I am mostly retired from the Metropolitan Council, where I was a manager of one of the wastewater treatment plants, maintenance and operation for 35 years, something like that. But I got into it a roundabout way because I'm an environmentalist and my background's education. Boy, I'm not sure what else to tell you about me. I have so many different experiences. Years and years ago, I volunteered as an environmental educator at times for the Maplewood Nature Center. And when our child was young, we took the kids there for the groups that we were in there for different things. And then later on, we were frog and toad listening volunteers. And I've had so many different environmental type experiences in my life. I'm a former master gardener as well. And I guess what I want to give is, if there's anything in my experience or background that can help get the Nature Center back to a sustainable place, I hope that I can give that. And what I expect to get is just maybe the satisfaction of being able to help the city again. I was on the first environmental committee before it became a commission too, so I had that little bit of experience thanks to Kathy Juneman. Thanks.
Thank you. Melanie, Jan, and then Liz, please.
Hi everyone. I'm Melanie Harding, and I'm a manager out at Tamarack Nature Center, and I will be attending as much as I can to these meetings. One of our director here, Marcy Oltman, some of you might know, we're kind of tag teaming this. We are definitely vested interested in Maplewood Nature Center and what's happening, because for a number of reasons. One is we support all of our fellow nature centers around the Twin Cities area. We feel so blessed to be in a metro area that has so many nature centers, and it's just sad when something goes down, we feel it too. So for me personally, I have been working at nature centers and museums and botanic gardens for almost 30 years, and I have a degree in biology as well as a master's in nonprofit management. So I come to this group hoping to be able to provide that long-time nature center experience, but also from the nonprofit side in terms of how does the group is Maplewood Nature Center is a municipality-run site. Are there options for partnering with nonprofits like that? I hope I can bring some ideas to you. I'm really excited about that. And then we are here at Tamarack are just, I have already learned stuff tonight just from the first few minutes of the meeting because I had some wrong information about why it closed, and so one thing I'm hoping to get is to just get the true story and what's happening and how things are moving forward. And I'm just really glad to be part of this team who can hopefully get things back up.
Great, thank you. Jan, Liz, and then I have Liam on the screen, but so just be warm for Liam. Thank you. Jan, you're muted, but we would love to hear your voice. I know it works because we tested. There we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jan Heyman, and I'm a former staff naturalist at the Nature Center, at Maplewood Nature Center. I came to the Nature Center, it's hard to believe, but more than 40 years ago, newly out of a master's degree program at the University of Minnesota in science education with all the nature classes I could amass in my portfolio. And I worked there for 36 years. I retired almost 5 years ago. This closure has just really hit me personally, as well as obviously the current staff, very, very hard. We built up those programs over many years. We worked as a collaborative team. And I must say, we revised our school curriculum probably 3 or 4 times as the curriculum changed and as the focus changed of science objectives from the state level. I loved my job. I feel like it was an amazing job. I also feel like the response that we got from teachers, from parents, from kids was just truly incredible. I feel like we were very, very effective. And we did, I mean, I could speak about that a long time. I know that this is not the purpose right now, but I'm glad to participate in this team. I certainly hope to find a way to continue the Nature Center with professional staff and dedicated volunteers as it has been for many, many years. And what I guess I can offer is just the perspective as a staff naturalist. I'm very familiar with the facility, the grounds, the trails, the programs, you know, the preserves, everything that we worked with over the years, at least within the last, 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, Liam, and Simba, please.
Hey, hi everybody. It's really great to be here. My name is Liz Roth, and I am a resident of Maplewood. About only 4 or 5 years here now. I lost count. 2020 has screwed up everything, particularly my ability to figure out what day or year it is. I am very interested in this. I have a 5-year-old son, and he loves being outdoors, and we have gone to both the Tamarack and the Maplewood Nature Center quite religiously until, coronavirus hit and now the closure. And I think it's just, there's so many opportunities for our children to benefit from the Nature Center. And my husband is a huge environmentalist, naturalist. He actually did the DNR frog survey as well. I know someone mentioned doing the toads and the frogs there. He does that, except for this year they didn't do it. And I'm just trying to look at a way to get engaged in the community as a member here. And I really like Maplewood, and I really want to keep this, as someone said, a gem within our grasp here. And it's really great to see how many people are also engaged in this. What I would like to get from today is more just an idea of overall how the problem, get a grasp on what the problem is. And obviously it's money, but a little bit deeper than that. How bad is it? What do we need to do to be able to put together an action plan? And what I can bring to the table is I'm really good at following through on action plans. That's just all I do, for my job. I'm an attorney, so I'm just the follow through and talking to people. And I have a lot of history with fundraising, political fundraising, and nonprofit fundraising on the side as well. So I can make the calls, I can write the letters. I am more than happy to dedicate as much time that you need someone to do something like that. Otherwise, I feel like when it comes to what particular programs can and can't be saved. It sounds like all the naturalists and environmentalists might be able to take that one over for me. But I follow marching orders really well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Liam, Simba, and then Stacy, please.
Hi, I am Martha. My son is Liam. He must have been the last one on a Zoom meeting.
Welcome, Martha.
And I am a Maplewood resident and have been a science teacher for the last 17 years. I actually just started this year working at a STEAM magnet school in Robbinsdale that I'm super excited about. And so hoping that I can have some connections there that I'll learn about in ways that they connect with community on that side of town that we might be able to use here. And just looking forward to a chance to kind of get involved more in the community. And I grew up in northern Minnesota and spent a lot of time outside and at a variety of, you know, environmental learning centers and things. So I really understand the importance of those types of places and want to help keep as many of them going as possible. And I was going to say what I can give. One of my strengths, I feel, is coming up with, you know, brainstorming and creative ideas and solutions to things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Simba, Stacy, and then Jim.
Folks, my name is in fact Simba Blood. I am a natural resources technician with the Ramsey, Washington Metro Watershed District. The district has collaborated with staff at the Maplewood Nature Center on programming for years and years and years. We've relied on the facility and the knowledge from those folks to help us with our educational messaging pretty extensively. So I'm here on behalf of the district. What I hope to get tonight is just an idea of the scope of the problem, what needs to happen to get that Maplewood Nature Center back up and open. And what I can give is my time and hopefully some good ideas.
Thank you. Wonderful. Welcome. Stacy, Jim, and then Joe, please.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm a social studies teacher and I'm a passionate environmentalist. I have a second grader daughter and a fourth grade son in fourth grade. And we spend we're outside all the time. This summer we were planting native plants, bushes and trees in our yard. We were really sad to learn about the Nature Center closing. So it's exciting to see this team being put together. I have taught human geography to ninth graders. So we learned about climate change. And I think it's really important to think about how we can connect better, how we can better connect schools with the Nature Center. And especially when we think about equity and students of color and from the city who don't get outside as much, if we can somehow, I think that's something I can bring to the table, somehow making connections regarding equity. I just know a lot of people who have been working in different areas. So I think I can bring to the table connections, maybe connecting creative ideas for us all. And yeah. And tonight I'm just happy to hear and need all of you and see what do we need to do to keep it going and what it needs to look like and what, yeah, that's it.
Well, wonderful.
I'm tired. I've been working all day, so I'm kind of scattered.
And you've been looking at a screen, I would imagine, all day for big portions. Yeah. It's Jim and Joe, and then I have a caller whose number I don't have, so I'm calling them. Last four digits are 6939. So Jim, and then Joe Fox.
Good evening. I'm Jim Beardsley. I'm a retired 3M environmental manager. Spent 41 years doing that type of work. I'm also past president and vice president now of the Friends of Maplewood Nature Center and Preserves. I'm also a former chair of the Environmental Natural Resources Commission and part of the committee before it became a commission. My introduction to the Nature Center was when I moved in 1983. It was a good place for me to go walk around, get some exercise, and take some pictures. And I've been visiting and off and on ever since, and volunteering the last 15, 20 years. What I'd like to get is a better understanding of how we got here, and get the whole picture, figure out where we can go from here. And what I can offer is experience, my crazy creative mind, and as much hard work as I can give.
Good. Thank you. Joe, you're on the phone?
I'm here.
What? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Joe Fox. I'm not sure where to start. The maybe future change of the Nature Center, I became, of course, very interested. I was on the park board in Maplewood for many years and was chair there when we were going to hold the hospital. The Anchor Hospital is going to be torn down and used as a fill out for ball fields at the current nature site. I and Les Blacklock, who was helped start a nature center I worked over in Hennepin County, we contacted him as kind of a resource. And so I was involved with the Park Commission when the Maplewood Center first started. I was director of the extension program here in Ramsey County for over 50 years. And, you know, when you work with agriculture, work with 4-H and so on, we needed facilities like this for, you know, teaching, especially urban people about agriculture, about nature and so on. So when I heard about the change here, I'm not sure what I have to offer except a lot of history, because I saw, you know, from day one. And I know 2 or 3 you were Master Gardeners. I was the one that started the Master Gardener program in Minnesota here in 1973 and 74 in Ramsey County. And that even had a tie-in. My wife was a volunteer at the Nature Center for nearly 30 years. And that's why this maybe is my first and last meeting, when you find out with her health, she had to quit being a volunteer, but we had to move a few blocks out of Maplewood. So right now, when I looked at all the requirements for being a member, maybe I won't be a member after tonight because my address is no longer Maplewood, but only 4 blocks out. So that's why I just have interest in the future and be very glad to be part of refocusing it. I've been involved in various programs that had to take a redirection for various reasons. So I'd be glad to help where I could, and some of you on the committee I've known for many years. Thank you,
Joe. I appreciate that. I have a caller, the last 4 digits of 6939. Are you by chance Micah or Kari? Okay. And I know Kevin Berglund is on the call because he emailed me for the link on there. So he's not a member, but this is a meeting that's open to the public. It's been posted. So there's interest from folks watching this. We are going to be broadcasting replays of the meeting are going to be available on our website. So if for folks who want to watch it again, or if you want to go back to a certain part, you have the ability to do that. So I appreciate everybody's sharing their stories about that. I think you get a sense for the breadth of the group. There's a lot of, obviously a lot of rich experience and history and knowledge about environmental education, about learning, about creating Master Gardener programs, which thank you for doing that, right? I have a former teacher who was a Master Gardener, and so I've heard about it for almost my whole life. And so this is sort of the power of groups like this, is that there's just a lot of talent and a lot of energy and a lot of ideas. And so I don't think any of them are crazy. To use Jim's line, I don't think any of these ideas are crazy, but I do think there's harnessing a lot of talent in the room. So I appreciate everybody being willing to do that. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go to the next part, which is to review the role of the task force. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So we as city staff we operate at the direction of the city council, and the purpose of the task force is to prepare a recommendation to the city council on how best to reopen the nature center to serve the region that is financially sustainable without reliance on Maplewood property tax support. And at its core, that's in the document that the city council approved and created. It necessitated this, and what we'll do is we'll get into how did we arrive at this purpose. And I think what we'll do is I'm going to ask City Manager Coleman to kind of walk through what the city went through from March 13th to today, how we prepared forecasts, how we've had budget conversations. And so some of this will be a lot of information thrust at you right away. The good news is it's going to be recorded, so you can go back but we can also ask questions along the way. For folks who are real familiar with Zoom, I'll be monitoring. If you want to raise your hand on using the tool online, you can. If you want to wave at me on the screen, I'll try to be watching for people who are waving. And if you're on the phone, just shout out that you have a question. We're a friendly group, and we'll get through this. But so I do want to say that that we've got some context and some history, and a lot of people wanted to know sort of the scope of the challenge and the scope of the problem, and also kind of how did we get to this point. And City Manager Coleman is going to kind of take us through that. But again, we're going to spend probably 6 sessions preparing a recommendation for the city council on how to best reopen the nature center in a financially sustainable way that doesn't rely on property tax support. And so it's a big challenge, but it's not impossible. And with the people in this room, I think we can get there. But I am going to turn it over to City Manager Coleman, and when you want a new slide, just tell me next slide and I'll roll it down. But I wanted to give a sense for what the budget impacts were for 2020 and then 2021. And so, Melinda, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Before I start, I just want to let you know that we have an email from Micah who's saying she's having a hard time getting in. She can't, the meeting ID that was sent was invalid. So maybe if you could just send her a phone number.
I will do it right now.
Okay, thank you. And before I get started, I just wanted to add something to sort of my biography. I have been in local government for over 30 years. My undergraduate degree is actually in environmental science, so I feel like I'm, among friends here tonight. My master's degree is in regional and city planning. So over the course of my career, I have decided that I really like management more. But I have a beautiful butterfly garden that got started with Ann Hutchinson and others in my yard. And I'm very proud of the gardens and things that I have in my yard too. So I do feel like we do have something in common. And I thought I would share that with you before I get into this dry budget material. I would also suggest that I have some material to cover. It'd probably take me about 15 minutes. And then we'll have questions. I think it'd be easier from a management standpoint to save questions till the end, and then Mike can call on each of you who have questions. With that,
Melinda, before you jump on, Micah was able to get on through the link I just sent, so my apologies to Micah, but if you can hear me, if you would unmute and just introduce yourself to the crowd, please, I'd appreciate it.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
All right. So it was interesting because you said her, but he.
I'm so sorry, Micah.
I did that.
That's okay. I actually dealt with that when I was setting up a flu shot clinic at my location. They thought I was a girl, so it's all fine. So my background is I've been a vice president and treasurer at the board of directors for a nonprofit group for about 5 years in the past. I'm a store manager at Lowe's Home Improvement Centers now for about 3 years. I own a small business for the last 17 years. And for me, the nature center is something that my dad actually walked, and I actually live about 8 blocks from it. And for me, I have 2 kids under 2, so I needed a lesson as how kids were made, because I got them all like as twins, unfortunately. And knowing that that was so close to where I live, and the fact that it's not going to be around for them to use, and going to nature centers when I was a kid and Boy Scouts was a huge part of my growing up. And that was one of the benefits of moving to the area that I moved into, is because we could walk there, and now we can't even use it. So to me, this is something, ultimately very important, not only for the community, but also just for my own family, for them to have the ability to go out, experience nature without having to go, 50 miles outside the city to go camping.
Well, thank you for that, and welcome. The last question I want to ask you is, what's one thing that you hope to get from this work, and what's one thing you're willing to give to the other members of the task force?
For what I was really looking to get out of some of this work is the ability to give back. One of the things that I truly believe is that, at a certain point in your life, in your career, you have a duty to give back, whether it's to the people that are around you or the people you work with, or just a civic duty to help others. And for me, what I want to get out of this is the fact that I was able to help somebody with something get out and do something they wouldn't have been able to do anymore, which is, if this goes away, they won't be able to do this. And then for me to give, out of anybody in this group, if you need anything, I'm more than willing to help. I am a small business mentor with SCORE. So this is stuff that I love doing, is mentoring, helping find solutions to problems that sometimes aren't always the most obvious.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and welcome. And I'm sorry for the mix up on the link, but I will rest assured we will all get really good at this. So Melinda, I'm going to share my screen again, and you can get back into kind of how we got here. So.
Thanks, Mike. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on the City of Maplewood's strategic priorities. Over the last 4 years or so, we have worked with the City Council to create a strategic plan. And the pillars of that strategic plan include the priorities that you see on the screen. And the first one is financial stability, which is sort of the foundation of why we're here tonight. Also coordinated communication, infrastructure, which means taking care of our roads and our utilities, our parks. Inclusiveness, which is something that the council is very concerned about, and we really work hard at involving our community. And this task force is an example of how we do that. We don't want to make decisions in a vacuum. We really want your input to help us try to problem solve how to make the nature center sustainable. We also believe in targeted redevelopment. We are an aging city. We don't have land left for new development. So our major work is looking at how do we redevelop the different sites around the city. And we have 3 different areas that we're focused on right now. One is the Gladstone neighborhood. The other is a neighborhood over at Rice and Larpenteur, where we're partnering with both the cities of St. Paul and Roseville to look at the redevelopment of that corner. And then the last one is the Maplewood Mall. And so those are sort of our 3 areas we're focusing on right now. And then lastly is operational effectiveness. And that's really on all of the city employees to figure out how do we bring our services and our skill sets to be as efficient and as effective as we can be. So with that, Mike, we can go to the next slide. So preliminary property tax. This was, we actually start talking about the budget in May. And we do the capital improvement plan first, and then we do the budget. This year, because COVID had knocked on our doorstep, the council really quickly identified that there was going to be revenue loss this year. A lot of uncertainty, but we knew that it was going to affect our revenue sources. And the council pretty early kind of gave me the instructions that for 2021, we do not want to increase the tax levy to our residents. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in a different slide. But I just wanted to show you here that our general fund, which is what we levy to the residents of Maplewood, has been just under $18 million, and next year it's going to be exactly the same. There are some things that we have to do, and that's we have debt service funds. Those cannot be, we have to pay those. That's basically our loans that we have for our street projects, our utility projects, and our capital improvement plans, which also will incorporate large purchases such as equipment, cars, police squad cars. All of our capital needs come out of that bonding way we fund things. We also have the EDA fund, which is our Economic Development Authority, and our capital project funds. So you can see that some of these things where they have brackets, those are where we had a decrease, and those were needed to get us to stay at that 0% increase. On the bottom, you'll see the levy increase of 0. And if we went to 1% levy increase, that would have given us another $232,000, but the council did not give us the latitude to raise taxes. So that really is immaterial at this point because we had the directive to stay at 0. Next slide, Mike. So how did the levy change? What this slide is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but really what it shows are what were increases that we had to absorb and the things that we could decrease. And so there's sort of a plus and minus going on here. And those are the things that we had to wrestle with. One of the biggest things was we had an increase in our debt service payments of $227,000. We got hit really hard on a workers' comp premium increase of $208,000. And that was a big surprise. We had been hit with a similar number last year, and we thought our claims were evening out. But what that means is that we had some accidents and some sick illnesses and things with our workers that we allowed them not to work. But that risk then has increased our premiums immensely, and that was something that we had not planned on. In addition to that, we had increased leave liabilities. That means making up for or paying for people's vacation and sick leave. So that was something we had to increase. We also had some grant money that we lost. There's some other things that were just, so this is sort of just a plus and minus approach to that. I will say that, and besides these things that you're seeing on the screen, as soon as April, the City Council had directed me and the department heads to look at projected revenue loss and what do we think would happen with COVID. And so we were challenged to come up with those projections, and we projected that we would have $1 million in losses this year. And that was pretty scary. So all of the department heads put their heads together, and our first round, we did a lot of, we reduced hours of some of our staff. We had an early retirement program in which we had, I think, 5 people participate in that. We delayed hirings. We did not hire any seasonal staff. All of our summer seasonal employees, we did not hire them. So that just put more pressure on our existing staff, especially park maintenance and our public works staff who typically have a lot of summer help. That didn't happen. The police department was not able to hire their community service officers. We really made a lot of a concerted effort to cut corners as soon as we could in 2020 to try to react to what we thought would happen because of COVID. So we actually came up with $956,000 in cuts. So that gave us a shortfall of about $64,000 to make those projections for revenue loss. That was a very early on exercise, and we thought that that would get us to where we needed to be, but it really wasn't enough. And I'll continue to talk about that now. Next slide. So just for purposes of, just letting you know kind of how things have worked here in the city. Since 2013, you can see the amount of tax levy that the city council has approved. And you can see that it varies. We've had a couple of years with zero back in 2014 and then for 2021. So our average increase over that last 9 years has been 2.8%. And what I will add to that is that the council really pays attention to what the tax levy is, and they really want to make sure that we're not taxing more than we need. And one of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons. One, we have a kind of lower income community compared to the rest of Ramsey County. We also have a lower median value homes compared to Ramsey County. And also Ramsey County being a county that has a lot of state and county buildings that don't pay taxes, Ramsey County tends to have higher tax rates than some of our other counties in the metro area. So the council is very sensitive to how much they levy, and they really have worked hard to make sure that we're not levying more than we need. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our budget process starts every year around May. It's up to the department heads to calculate their budgets. This year it was zero-based with no increase in hiring any additional employees. In fact, we cut folks, as you know. The CIP, we do that before we get into the budget, and that sort of gives us the basis for our capital budget. And that was done, and we scaled back our capital improvements this year. We did very little. We actually took a timeout on buying any equipment. We did 2 street projects this year, and we're going to do 2 next year, but we're not doing anything else. We're not buying cop cars for a year. We're not buying other equipment for other departments for this year or next. So we're really tightening our belts. We are not doing our street or our park improvement. Every year we improve 1 park each year, and we did not do those either. Then there's the administrative review, and I look at things as to how do they fit into our strategic plan of objectives. We also have performance measures that each of the department heads and staff are required to measure their activities to make sure it is meeting the objectives of our strategic plan. And then we have our tax levy target, which, as I said, next year is 0. The finance department then does an analytical review and looks at some of the other funds to make sure that we have everything that we have to provide for. So what is required spending and what is discretionary. And then I make recommendations to the city council, and we have those discussions through our council workshop with the city council. We started those in early June and really got into it earnestly in July. And actually last night or Monday night, the council did adopt the preliminary levy, which sets that then for 2021. Next slide. General fund overview. This is just a screenshot of how we get our funding sources and how we do expenditures. And as you'll see here, the property taxes in 2019 were just under $16 million. And this year they're $17 million, and next year they'll go up by 300,000. So in order to do that, we had to make some cuts to make that work. One of the things that I do want to point out that you'll see on the bottom line, it says surplus fund balance of $1.8 million. And I want to explain how that happened. We were very fortunate through our state, the federal and state governments to be the recipient of some CARES Act funding. And that was just over $3 million. And what you see there, that $1.8 million is the residual, if you will, surplus that we have because of the CARES funding. We did spend all of the CARES money legitimately on public works and police and staffing, all of the changes we made at City Hall. We put up plexiglass everywhere to protect our employees. We've made a lot of changes So that money is there, but one of the things that it really is, it's a cushion for next year. So one of the things that we're trying to anticipate is our property tax collections and our property tax petitions. Property tax collections are what each and every one of us pay for property tax in the city that we live in. Property tax petitions are what happens when companies like 3M, Maplewood Mall, some of our larger commercial places like Costco. In 2018, those petitions, those are when people challenge their taxes to the court. And then the court determines whether or not the market value that has been assigned to them is reasonable or not. And my experience in this is that the courts generally fine for the businesses and do reduce their taxes. In 2018, 2019, we had tax petitions of $750,000, which in tax capacity, that would be like 3%, that would be 3% tax levy to get that. And so that was another kind of really hard hit to us to try to solve for how do we make up that money. That's a really tough one. We also anticipate that property tax collections will be reduced because there's a lot of folks in Maplewood who are unemployed and will not likely be able to pay their taxes. So we're trying to anticipate that as well. But we know that as uncertain as COVID is, we anticipate the next year or maybe two, we're going to be challenged with this. So that's what that fund balance is going to be used for, and the council is actually allocating that for that purpose, for lost revenue and tax petitions. Next slide. So this is just a little bit of history about staffing changes, and as you can see from 2013, where we had 171 employees, we're now at 175 employees. You'll see there was a big dip in 2018. That was when we merged with the YMCA at the community center and our several part-time people, and we had a few full-time people who were either laid off or they were wrapped into become Y staff members. And then you'll see in 2019, we jumped back up to 177 employees. And that relates to our necessity to go from a volunteer or paid on call fire EMS crew to a full-time crew. We found that over the years, we were not able to find enough volunteers and people to work on a paid per call basis because of just simply the way we all work. Many people, you know, in the old days, there were lots of more fire stations and people sort of lived by the fire stations, were able to get there. But as things changed, we just couldn't keep staff and it was becoming a problem. We weren't able to keep people around to provide those services. So we went to a full-time department in 2019. Then you'll see we had a high of 180 employees in this year, and for next year, we're looking at being at 175. Next slide. So this is a really telling slide. So with all of our property tax revenue that we get, you'll see here that that's called the general fund, and 76% of general fund dollars are wages and benefits for our employees. That leaves us 26% or 24% to do everything else. And so when you get hit with the workers' comp increase of $300,000 or $250,000, and you have tax petitions and all these unplanned expenses, it really just puts the noose around our neck. There's not a lot we can do. So there's just not a lot remaining funds to work with. Next slide. So some of our budget goals and challenges for next year and was to have the 0% tax levy. We had the debt service levy increase of $27,000. We had the workers' compensation premium increases We had an increase in employee leave funding of 128,000 and projected reduction in revenues, and that doesn't include tax revenues, of $196,000. And as I mentioned, we don't know what those potential tax positions will be for this year and next year. And so I don't know about the world that you work in, but it's extremely difficult to try to plan for a pandemic. And as in our personal lives, there's been a lot of disruptions and disappointments. This is another one. We just don't know what we don't know. And the way things are looking now, a lot of economists are saying that next year is going to be worse and the year after that can be worse too. And as much as you have to be careful about listening to economic forecasts, we have to do our best to do just that. And it's a really difficult place to be. Next slide, Mike. So some of the things that were not funded in next year's budget were recreation programming for almost $400,000, nature center program for over $215,000. We did not do our playground this year, as I mentioned before. We do one a year, and that did not happen this year, nor will it happen next year. We did not put money in our fund balance reserve because we knew we had the CARES Act money to help us with that. We did not do our HRA levy, which allows us to help with business retention efforts and business development, nor did we do our economic development levy at all. So those were the things that we did not do. And then once again, just a reminder that with every 1% levy increase, that's a cost that gives us $230,000. So those are the things that we were not able to do. Next slide. This is just sort of an informational slide. The median estimated market value increase for Maplewood those are determined by Ramsey County. They do all the market valuations, and they see an 8.1% increase in values for next year, and the Maplewood median value home increase of 6.1%. So once again, the median home value payable in 2020, $234,000 for a home, and payable in 2021, the value went up to $248,300. Well, that is the number that is then the basis for how the Ramsey County taxes you. Next slide. So one of the things that the council had to really consider this year, and they did this on Monday night, was to affirm the target tax levy increase of 0%. They made some policy decisions on unfunded items, and I talked about what some of those were, including the defunding, I guess, and I don't really like that word, but that's what happened with Park and Rec and Nature Center. They also did not do 2020 CIP items, which were Sherwood Park Playground and some open space improvements. I will say that we did move forward to do some maintenance on the boardwalk at the Nature Center, and I believe that work is just about to get started. And I will also just remind everybody that the Nature Center open space area is still open and available for our residents. The trails are maintained. And the boardwalk is getting a little bit of work within the next couple weeks. Next slide, Mike. Just for comparison, the City Council likes to see things like this, so we provide that to them every year so they can see where we kind of land in terms of other cities of the same size as Maplewood. And you can see that our combined city taxes and other taxes we're the second highest in this cohort that you see on the screen. And this is just a comparison of total taxes on a $200,000 home in 2016. Pretty soon, within the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to get some data a little bit later on the 2018, and we'll see that. But this is one of the things that always gets council's attention because they see that we're relatively highly taxed compared to some of our other cities. Next slide. This is how do we compare with unemployment. And this number is also very alarming to our council members. If you look at Ramsey County's unemployment rate right now, it's 9.2%. And when we look at Maplewood, our city's unemployment is 9.8%. And when you look at the whole metropolitan area, that's 8.2%. So Ramsey and specifically Maplewood have higher unemployment than most of the metro area. Well, that is something that we are concerned about, because if we have people who aren't working, that lends itself to food insecurity and possibly losing their home. And all of these things are of grave concern to us. And so we really want to make sure that we're doing our best not to put any additional burden on those residents. So with that, we will go to just kind of zeroing in on what it looked like for the Nature Center, what that budget looked like. Next slide. So here you can see that the Nature Center, in terms of revenues, had program fee revenue of just over $10,000 and property tax revenue of almost $280,000. So what you see here, if you look at expenditures, once again, you'll see that most of the expenses were for to pay for staff, full and part-time staff, and temporary wages, supplies, and then other fees. And so what you see here is a very dependent situation where the Maplewood Nature Center was relying totally, almost totally, on property tax dollars. Next slide. And this is just a chart that shows revenues and expenses in a little different way. You can see that property taxes are 96% of our revenues, and wages were almost 85% of the expenditures. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit better picture of that. And then here it is, next slide. The recreation programs and Nature Center combined were supported by property tax contributions of almost $600,000, which is almost 3% levy, just to keep those two programs going. And so in a year where you're asked to do a 0% levy, these two items would have added up to just almost a 3% increase to Maplewood residents just for that service, those services. And that, I think, is the end of my slides, isn't it, Mike? I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we could do questions. Mike, I'll let you manage how we do that.
Yeah, so so folks can have a couple of options. You can put them, like I said, you can raise your hand, you can yell, you can type it in the chat box. Marge asked a question early on about the goal. And does the goal mean that there will be no financial support from the city moving ahead, or can you clarify what it means to be financially sustainable?
Is that for me, Mike?
That's for you.
I really don't think that we know that right now. What I can tell you is there's no money in next year's budget. That doesn't mean that something couldn't change, but where we're at now, with all of our decisions in terms of how we spend money, I don't see us looking for new expenditures, but if we found something else that we could cut to make up for that, that would be the mechanism that I think we would be in next year. But I also want you all to note that I don't decide that. Those are financial decisions that are actually decided by the council. I can only advise them, but that's up to them to decide. But I think we're open to that discussion. But I think sort of our orders, our marching orders, so to speak, and Councilmember Juniman can add to this perhaps, was to try to find ways that wouldn't be on the backs of Maplewood taxpayers when we looked at the folks who came to the community center and the Nature Center and participated in our park and rec programming. We found that 20% only were Maplewood residents. And so that's where we thought we just need to take a bigger regional look at how to solve the problem. So I think all options are on the table, but I think the underlying goal is to not have to tax folks to run this facility.
Thank you for that. Jan, I see a waved hand, so if you would unmute and ask your question, and like I said, you can use the chat box or you can just wave at me. Jan, go ahead.
Hi, I do have a question. So for many years, the Nature Center spent a lot of time educating children in the schools as well as the residents about stormwater issues in education. And we were supported by I believe it's called the Environmental Utility Fund, and that supported staff. And I believe that fund is still, it was on the website, that fund is still paying towards Nature Center about $100,000. So I wondered if you could speak to that. That is an additional source of revenue that the Nature Center staff, it's also a benefit to the city through the education that was done on stormwater education.
Thank you for that question, Melinda. Or do you want to answer that, or would you like Audra to answer? You're both experts in this.
Well, I will try, and then Audra maybe can correct me if I have some misconceptions here about what's happening. So the environmental fund is available, and it has been used to help fund staff over the years. However, it's not a best practice to do that, because we do have needs that need to be, that those funds need to be used for. And it does relate to storm drainage, but it's more to support the projects for our projects. So when we're doing a street project, for example, we want to incorporate rain gardens or other aspects to help with that. Those are really what those funds were meant for. And between myself and our finance director, we really want to be more cautious about how those funds are used, and that they're really more true to the purpose. I think that some other people here before me thought that that could be a really good way to sustain staff, but it really, over the long haul, isn't going to do it, because we just have too many other needs associated with our street and capital other improvement projects throughout the city. So that's my understanding. Audra, do you have anything else you would add to that?
No, except that yes, to answer Jan's question, it did, if I remember correctly, UF, there was about half of the administrative assistants salary had potentially come out of that budget. The full-time naturalist staff, and then a quarter of one of the other part-time naturalists. So it was a portion of the salaries, like Melinda said. Was that the best practice to use those UF funds for that? That's something the city has to figure out. In the past, Jen, you're correct. That's what that money was used for, out of the UF.
Jan with a follow-up, and then I have a question I'll read from March. And then Melanie, I saw you.
It's my understanding that there's an educational component that's a requirement for receiving that funding. And without Nature Center staff to provide that educational component to the community so that they know how to mitigate for stormwater pollution, that's my understanding. So if what you're saying is quite different. I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, Jan, you're right about the educational component. We do have a requirement to do that, and our public works staff, Steve Love and his group, as well as Sean Finwell and Emily, our natural resource coordinator. Those are the folks who now are charged with that activity. So we're not dropping the educational requirement from that.
Marge, I'll ask your question to either Audra or to Melinda. Have we benchmarked how other nature centers are financed, or their operational best practices for nature centers?
I can speak to that briefly. We'll get into that more at an upcoming meeting, but during the Nature Center master planning process last year, that was a big part of pulling that plan together, was kind of looking what our neighboring nature centers are doing, how they are operating, how they were funded. So that would be something we can definitely get into going forward at an upcoming meeting.
Okay. Marge, that's good. Melanie, you have a question from Tamarack. If anybody else wants to jump in, just let me know. I'm looking.
Thanks, Mike. So I was wondering, maybe Jim can respond or Audra, but how the Friends of the Maplewood Nature Center group is connected. Do they provide any funding for the Nature Center? Is there that ambition to have a nonprofit fundraising connection? Could you just speak to that?
Jim, would you like to
yeah.
go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jim. Yes, the Friends is a very small group. We do provide funds to the Nature Center for supplies. We've matched funds with the charitable gambling grants to put in fence, the broken at signs, benches. We've supplied material for the I can't think of the garden area. Can't think of the name.
Community garden.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah, the community garden.
And you also gave money toward when we did our outreach events out at Friendship Farm. It was through Friends of Maplewood Nature. They helped fund getting the Raptor Center to come bring up some of the animals for education at those events. So
yeah, so
really
we've spent we work directly with the Nature Center staff to fulfill whatever needs they need. What they needed, they would come to us and ask us for funds, say for cross-country skis.
The snowshoes, yep.
Cross-country skis for them. Snowshoes, or not cross-country skis, but snowshoes. Gloves and mittens for when the kids come, they don't have them, so they provided them. The Friends group that's how we supported it, and then also with members being volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Do you have was there like an annual expectation of how much would be contributed by the Friends group, or was it just on an as needed basis?
It was done on an as needed basis, project by project. Again, we work very closely with the staff on things, particularly with the gambling grants, things that they needed that were more than just a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there, maybe $3,000, $1,500, whatever. We would work with the city and the staff through the gambling grants to fund those things.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, this is Kathy Juneman.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a couple of thoughts, just so there's some history for people. I've thought this for quite some time, but you have to let people come to their own conclusions when you work with them. Meaning, I've worked with any number of councils now. I've been here quite a while. And we have a history in Maplewood that I've tried to break up to 10 years ago, and people weren't buying it, that we spoil our residents with underwriting these things to the point where the expectation is people don't have to help. And I think that's part of the problem why the Friends group isn't any bigger. They thought, we don't need to help with that because the city will take care of it. And like I said, it all has to do with the whims of the councils. And so, the staff has nothing to do with that. They have to do with what we, meaning the group, puts to them. So we have to help try and change the mentality because let's face it, the world has changed many times since that mentality came to be. And so we have to help change that. So if people know our need, I firmly believe if people know our need, they will help. And so I think we need to spread that word in the community. This is an asset. We've heard from lots of people, what a jewel, why are you doing this? Well, that's because we are charged with trying to stretch the money to keep the city moving and the necessary services provided. So I think it's time for us to turn to the taxpayers and say, we do need your help. And I do hope that one of the things that comes out of this is that we help expand the Friends of Maplewood Nature, because that will expand our volunteer base. More people in the community will be aware of what it takes to run the Nature Center and spread the word about what an asset it is, and that it takes a lot of people to keep it there. I think we historically missed the boat on that one. And so we need to get on board with spreading the word. Yes, it's an asset. Yes, it's a jewel. Lots of people have liked it. But guess what? Now we need people to help. And I just think we need to make that part of our mission. Just my own opinion, for whatever that's worth.
Well, thank you for sharing. Stacy made a comment in the comments in the chat box that said it sounds like we need to get funding. Hold on, it just slid down. So I need to get funding as an education center instead of a city service. There's so much we can teach the children there. It's their future. That said, children can even learn about business there. So I'm going to very quickly look and scan the screen. Is there anybody else who wants to make another comment or have a question about some of the background information?
That's Jim. That's Joe Fox, I think.
Joe, go ahead.
No, I didn't make a comment.
Okay.
I'm thinking a lot about that education component because that is one that we probably have undervalued over the years. They're not getting this in the regular formal classroom like they are in some other programs where, you know, things that are happening out there, they just don't learn in the classroom. And that classroom that we have out there is a good spot that a lot of that has taken place. Excuse me.
Thank you.
And remember, when the schools were closer to this, when they transported at one time all the district funded buses to bring the classes out to the nature center, was that way before your time too, Jan? Jan? Hello? Am I on?
She's still, yep, she's unmute. I don't know if she heard your question.
Okay, I'm
Jan,
here.
go ahead.
No, I remember that time really well. That I came on in 1980, and yeah, we worked with 2 classes a day for many years with the 622 school district, and we developed a special program just for the school district, and we tried to reach as many of those classes as we could. It was very, very valuable program. But what happened over time is that, you know, the nature center, Joe, you can speak to this better than I can because I came in a couple of years after the nature center started, but it seems that the nature center was built small, both for the site, but perhaps also because the idea was to bring one class out at a time. So it was a very quality educational experience for the students. And so for many years we took one at a time, but then teachers started team teaching and busing got to be more and more expensive. And at some point, after about 10 years, that they withdrew the funding for the busing, and then it was more on an individual basis.
Because our building was only half the size at that time.
Right. When it started out, it was very
that building
small.
was expanded after that time, right?
That's right. Still small compared to many other facilities around the Twin Cities, but yes.
Yeah, it is. Marge has a comment, and it says in the chat box, how do we move forward to investigate other financing options, such as legacy gifts, naming opportunities, business partnerships, joint program with other East Metro nature centers? That is, if I can hold that comment for a few, I'm going to ask the question very specifically next, but I did want to get that into the discussion. Liz, I saw you writing something that was wanting to speak, and then Stacy, I saw your picture. You're good.
I'm jotting down all the ideas that are coming.
Got it. Thank you.
How I function.
I'm doing the same, so we'll compare notes. Melanie, you raised your hand. I saw. Did you have another question?
I did, and I'm afraid the thought has left my brain.
Well, Micah will go next, and when it comes back, you let me know. Micah, you raised your hand, and then Jim after Micah. You're connecting to audio. It's going to be just great. Unmute, and we'll hear you just fine. Micah?
There you
go. Oh, yep, there we go. Sorry, it kept kicking me in and out. I guess the question I have from looking at some of the slides, I don't know if maybe it was not transparent enough for me, but the way it was sounding is that we're supposed to replace all of the tax revenue to fund the Maplewood Nature Center. Is that not correct? Or I guess, what is the actual funding goal? Because it's one thing to talk about options as to how to get there, but if we don't even know how much we're supposed to get, it's all for nothing.
I will look to the city manager Coleman to answer that question. But I will say, just at a very high level, if the ideas for programming shifts, you don't have to necessarily replace the whole amount. So if your emphasis is on education, it might be a different cost model. If your emphasis is open space, it might be a different cost model. So it's a little bit of, you have to have the debate about what it needs to be, and then you build a funding stream behind it. So I wouldn't view it as a full-scale replacement of $300,000. I would think about what is the nature center's role, and how do we fund it sustainably over time without relying on property taxes. And so it's a really complicated question that I think we will wrestle with as a group. But City Manager Coleman, do you want to add any other comments? And then we'll have Jim with a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think you gave a really good answer to that. It's sort of the chicken and the egg question. But I do think that it's important that we kind of go with the fact that for next year, there is not city fund support. As I mentioned earlier, if something changes and we say, well, we need $60,000 to do X, Y, Z, the council might look at where we're at economically. Let's say January of next year, we'll know a lot more than we know tonight. And so I'm not trying to be, I don't want to be not transparent about it, but it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And I don't know, maybe Councilmember Juniman would have something to add, but I think where we're at today is we really have to reinvent how we do this. And maybe it's more volunteers, maybe it's legacy donors, such as Marge suggested. We just have to really look at all options. I think it's going to be real interesting to dive into how the other nature centers are funded and see, how that works. But all options are on the table. But at this point, there has not been any budget set aside for next year for these programs. Councilmember Juniman, do you have anything you would add to that?
Well, no, except you're right. It's not written into the budget for next year. That's what comes down the road when you have to look at 0% levy increase. I've been through a lot of this in my years, and this is by far the most painful. It's almost beyond belief that you have to make these kinds of decisions, but you do. And I think part of the beauty of that, if there is any, is that it will force us to say, okay, what is the primary goal of this place, of this facility? And then there could be 3 or 4, if you will, job duties for this facility. But based on that, that's how you go after your funding. And we will have to, part of the job of this committee or this task force, and then it will fall onto the council, is to decide how to prioritize those. And we are by no means saying that what we had wasn't terribly valuable. It was. And we're hoping to get back what we can and build on it. But yes, this is something that we have a financial disaster that we have to recover from. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. But I also think that part of the solution down the road will be, since we probably won't be able to afford as many staff, is taking advantage of and making good use of the people who are volunteers. We have several volunteers with great backgrounds, and I don't know that we've made proper use of them in the past. So this is going to have to be a blend of people with a common goal of making this work. But believe me, I didn't do a thing for me to have to say 0% increase when this was part of it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I'm Jim, you have a question, then Candace has a comment, and Cammie has a comment, and I'll get to both of those. So Jim, what's your question?
Well, I wasn't a question, it was more of a comment. when we were talking about the schools, one of the things that the Friends group does is we have $1,000 a year in busing expenses. We pay the school bus bill. And so that's one of the ways we supported the Nature Center was if a group wanted to come from a school and they couldn't afford the bus, they submitted the bill to us and we paid it. And some years it was a couple $100, a couple of years it was more than $1,000. But we always paid that. We never asked, can they get the funds anywhere else? We just said, pay it. They're coming to the Nature Center, we pay it.
Got it. Thank you for that. Candace had a comment that said that Tesla had mentioned to someone on the ENR that they were interested in partnering with some part of Maplewood Nature Center environmental related programs. Should we approach Tesla? Is that a direction we would feel comfortable going? City Manager Coleman or Audra, would you want to respond to questions about are there any groups that we would not feel comfortable approaching, or are we comfortable exploring all options for financing partners or funding partners?
Well, one thing I would bring up is, before this decision was made, we were already working really hard to come up with creative funding sources. Joe Sheeran, our communications manager for the city, had been working with the Nature Center and exploring sponsorships and partnerships. We were heading in that direction, looking for different ways.
Audra, can I stop you for a second? You're a little faded out. So if you could maybe lean in a little bit and be a little louder, that would be great.
Sure. Am I better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We had Joe Sheeran, our communications manager for the city, had been working quite extensively with the Nature Center, and Jim, maybe you know that with the Friends group, just trying to raise awareness of not only fundraising opportunities, but ways to get in-kind services, and he'd been reaching out to businesses, and I would anticipate that's something we would actively continue. It would definitely be a viable option to look at to see what synergies there could be there. So absolutely, and I think that's something that we'd probably have to rely on. I don't know, Melinda, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think we're open to any and all ideas on that.
Okay.
Well, the Friends group met several times with Joe,
yeah,
and we actually formed a subcommittee to do fundraising, and they met once, and that was it. So right. I don't know what became of that.
All right. Yeah, it kind of coincided with these tough decisions that had to be made, but we were just kind of gaining momentum and steam with that. So that's always an option to look at again, with this group and see how, we could explore options.
Cami asked a question of, are there any historical or legal ties to the Nature Center or that property that we need to be aware of as we go forward?
Yeah, I can answer that, Mike. There is a deed restriction on that property. That property came to us through the Department of Natural Resources. And in so it requires us to use that property for open space or other nature kinds of studies. So we could not sell that land for redevelopment. That's not an option. I don't think it says we have to use the building in any certain way, but the land itself is designated open space and cannot be sold for redevelopment.
That was in that first LawCan grant that we applied for. That was very clear in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. I have it's a two-part question. So both Stacy and Martha mentioned the concept of running other programs out of there. What if we ran a daycare out of there, like Hamarack has a pre-K program? Martha said, or a nature-focused preschool. Hartley Nature Center in Duluth has done this. And then sort of the third comment was, you could potentially get some state funding for diverse students. What are some thoughts about other shifting focuses of programs? Is that something that is on the table, and is that something that's worth exploring? And Melinda, you'll have your pen raised, so I'm thinking you're going to answer.
Well, I can tell you that I have had some inquiries from people who are interested in using the Nature Center for environmental day camps or day school daycare for elementary kids, and even one offer was for preschool kids. And I did tell the people who express that interest I would keep their name and their emails, and that through this process, that would be something that would be put on the table. So there is interest to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Jim, your hand is up on the screen again. Did you have a different comment or question, or is that from the last one?
Oh, unmute.
Sorry, I thought I did. I have a question. Part of it goes with the goal and the funding.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we did a master plan and there was $50,000 or something like that for the cost to expand the nature center building. And is this committee, part of this committee's or task force's responsibility, or maybe it should be, to figure out how to get everything sustainable, including adding to that building like it's been designed?
I can address that.
Sure.
And then maybe Councilmember Judeman might have something to add. I can tell you that when the master plan, we went through that process, there was some concern voiced by the council at that time that the capital improvements needed to really do an overhaul of the nature center and expand the nature center were not on the radar for the next 5 to 6 years because of the street and utility needs that we have in the community. We're so behind on road improvements and other things that I don't think they would see bonding for that when there are so many other needs. Councilmember Juneman, you can add to that or you know.
Thank you. I think it sounds like a good idea, but I think the city manager is correct. It's not about me. It's about, it takes 5 minds to make a decision like that. And this is already a council that is very focused on the amount of debt that we incur. So bonding is very carefully done. And now we are in a really, let's face it, bad time to be taking on great amounts of debt. And well, I remember the conversation about the building itself, and I don't know that we've had anyone actually look at it for what it would take, but my suspicion is to make that something that's usable for actual classroom, continuing classroom space would be a phenomenal expense. That building was not designed with that in mind at all. So it's not out of the question, it's just where do you get the value out of those kinds of things? So you're right, Jim, this committee needs to make a decision about our goal, knowing what the council's goal was. But we have to be careful not to get what I call grandiose, because we could undo ourselves by making the goal bigger than what will make us sustainable. Because remember, the sustainable piece is what the council is aiming for on this. Council's a group.
Yeah. Right. And my concern is that the current facility may be the liability or the limiting factor in actually doing some of the things that people have talked about, because it doesn't have the right design for doing good classroom work or things like that. So
I agree.
That's my concern, is if we can find a way to first get the sustainability so we can reopen the Nature Center Visitor Center, and keep it out of the tax rolls. But can we also look, or should we, or is it too far gone to look at it and say, can we also look at finding ways to fund the expansion of the building?
Mm-hmm.
If you take it as a long range plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have Melinda, I've got Becca, you popped up on my screen. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I would just like to add that, you know, I think that what Jim just said about sort of maybe a holding pattern for a few years, and to, you know, try to just do the programming that we can do in the existing facility. And if we find that we're stabilized and we have good sources of income from partners, donations, whatever, that might be something that 5 years from now we'll have a completely different view on that. But I can just tell you for the next 5 years, the CIP does not include any improvements at the Nature Center other than some maintenance issues that we need to do on the boardwalk and, some little things. But I'd also like to just kind of put this in context for some of you who don't necessarily pay attention, and most people don't, about our debt in Maplewood. I started working in Maplewood in 1995, and I left in 2006 and went to work for Target and was invited back in 2013. And when I came back in 2013, I was the Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director. And the one thing that was really impressed upon me was the amount of debt this community had. And then we had a new council in 2014 who was very concerned about the amount of debt. It was $80 million. And that is just crazy. And so there was a time during the last recession in 2008, 9, 10, 11, where it was cheaper to borrow money, which we're seeing that now as well. And there was a major interchange at English and 36 that cost us a whole boatload of money. So that got the council's attention. And so we've sort of been on a skinny diet, so to speak, on capital improvements for the last 7 years. And so now we're down to about $53 million. And the council has a goal to continue to have that go down. And so if you have a goal of reducing debt, it's hard to take on big projects like adding on to the Nature Center when we have to do roads and we have to make sure that our parks are maintained and our open spaces are maintained. There's just so many demands on those funds. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective on that, on why, the council just didn't say, no, we don't want to spend money on the Nature Center. It was part of a really much larger discussion.
And just to bring a little more perspective to the expense of the English 36, that wasn't our idea originally, but when they said when MnDOT comes through and they're going to do a project on 36, their answer was to close off the entrances to Highway 36 from Maplewood, basically. Close off Atlantic Street, English Street, close off how you can get to Atlantic Street. They just put up a barrier and they're gone. Mm-hmm. And so it was by the foresight of our engineering department saying, is that what we want to do to our city and the businesses at that intersection? Probably not. So the only way to keep this community viable is to invest at that point, because that's when they're doing it. So that was not something that was anticipated by the council, nor was it something that we chose to do because we thought we should spend a lot of money on a road. It was the right thing to do to keep the community viable with access to Highway 36, and it was being done when MnDOT said it was being done.
Thank you. Becca, you popped on the screen. I want to make sure I catch you. And then Martha and Stacy had some comments in the chat room. So hang on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just typing things up. Would it be possible just to get a group together to start a bond measure campaign so that way Maplewood residents can vote on having specific funding for the Nature Center and use that as a long-term plan for funding, but then in the meantime, just chase whatever grants and sources are available? Would that?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's going to fit in one of the themes that I'm hearing. One of the themes is around funding, and so I'm going to read a comment from. So hold that thought, because it's going to fit right where I'm going to go. Martha made a comment about maybe there are environmental grants or supports for the building upgrades that could lead to the building being self-sustaining from an energy standpoint, or grants that would support other renovations. And Stacy made a comment about an interested school district or pre-K program might need to remodel the site to make it more functional as a permanent school. And she provided a link to a school in Apple Valley. So there is there might be, right, some, if you shift focus, you might need to make a small investment to make that successful. So those are certainly things to explore. In the interest of time, I do want to get to the last question, and this is where Becca and Marge, I haven't forgotten about you. It just took longer to get there. And that was really around this concept of how do we want to use this information going forward? And I think one of the things that I've heard comments around is around funding. So whether it's a funding stream or it's a funding partnership or it's some other sort of elements, some sort of central theme around funding. And I think one of the things that I would like the group to maybe think about is what are those other buckets that you have to consider, and how so as you think about, right, we got a funding thing and we might have a partnership thing and we might have a renovation asset building piece. What are those other areas? And you don't have to obviously decide that today, but over the next several months, I think those are some of the things that we're going to have to wrestle with. And so how else would you like to use some of this information that you heard tonight kind of going forward? What are the things that you captured that you want to make sure we continue to think about long term? And I'll stop sharing the question, but how do you want to use this information going forward, and where else might you want different information? And I'll either call on folks or you can just sort of wave at me and jump in. How would you like to use this information, or what other information do you want? Simba, you popped up on screen. Is there anything that, okay.
Sure, I'll go.
Liz, then March, please.
I think this is a great starting point to kind of give a general idea of what the problem is and general brainstorming. I think normally we'd be in a conference room with a whiteboard and, writing this all down and crossing things out and putting things together. And I'm a very visual person, so I can already imagine it. And what I like about what happened here today is all the ideas that have been put out there are really great ideas. I think now what we need to do is follow through on investigating the actual viability of those ideas. And I think we got to make sure that we stay on task and not get, like Councilwoman said, grandiose, and make sure that we stay on task. And we're just trying to essentially, from my perspective, from what I'm looking at, is maintain this through the next 3 to 4 years while we have so much uncertainty in our economy. And each year, you can kind of reevaluate where we are, because who knows? I mean, I remember when we went on lockdown, everyone thought June, we'll be fine in June. And then now look where we are, it's the uncertainty of the future that is going to be difficult. And I think we need to kind of figure out, are we going to get the cart before the horse? I mean, you can't go out and ask for funding if you don't have any idea what you're going to do with the funding yet either. So trying to figure out, do we want to concentrate on how we program and what our programs look like, and rank what programs we like and what the costs are, and then kind of go out there? Because from what I've been hearing, there's a lot of little niche nonprofits or groups that donate to very specific things only, not just general, we're going to give the Nature Center $100,000 this year and they're going to do what they want with it. I mean, that could exist, and I hope it exists, right? That'd be wonderful. But I think there needs to be, I think this is a brainstorming, and I think the next thing is to kind of figure out our priorities and see what's actually out there and do a little bit of independent investigation as a member. And that's what I plan on doing, is putting together a few more thoughts now that it's parsed out what the goal of this committee is. So then next time I can come and have a few more ideas rather than taking notes on all the ideas.
Good. Marge, you go next, please.
Yes. So when I read the handouts that came along with the invitation, the goal from a timeline perspective from council sounded like it was to be done by the end of this year. And just listening to all the discussion and the so many ideas, it does not seem like a realistic timeline, number one, to me. And number two, I thought we were also supposed to be creating some kind of a survey that would go out to either the residents or the users of the park. And is that something that we need to start planning for?
I can actually answer the second part of your question, which is community survey. So the city does a citywide survey of a randomized sample of residents, and we do that. I've only been here a year, but I think it's every other year that it's done. And so that survey is prepared to go out in October.
Oh.
And one of the questions that we ask is, information related to access to nature center, to recreation services, to outdoor spaces. And then we also ask a question about comfort level of funding, whether it's, am I willing to pay more in property taxes? Am I willing to pay more in actual fees? So the information regarding resident input is there. We also have some technology that we can do some online engagement. Online engagement is not perfect, but it is something. So we are going to do a community survey and some online engagement.
Okay.
So I'm confident we're going to get some more voices. I think the other question you asked was around ambitious agenda. You're right. It's ambitious, and I'm reasonably confident that if we can, with some plucky staff work and the brains in this group, that we can sort of get the right buckets or the right sort of things framed up. It may lead to some more work in 2021, but I think the path can be prepared to be successful. But your point is well taken. It is a lot.
My number one concern is we're already a month behind the timeline that was listed.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
So anyway, just a concern. There's a big team and a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
Mike, can I ask Belinda or Kathy a question?
Sure.
Yes.
When we sold or gave the YMCA a significant part of the Maplewood Community Center, what did the savings all go to?
That's a question.
We saved several thousands of dollars when that took place.
That goes to Melinda, that question.
So, Joe, are you talking about the CARES money?
No.
Well,
no. So when we merged with the Y took over the operations of the community center. We still
saved us several thousands of dollars as it was announced.
It saved us about $500,000 a year, but it's not enough. And now, as you know, the Y is in terrible financial trouble. So we're very concerned about that as well. We certainly don't want an empty building that we have to try to sell a fitness center in today's environment. So we're really being cautious about that. But that move that happened back in 2017, that saves a lot of money. And probably had that not happened, what has happened to the Nature Center probably would have happened back then.
Yeah, I agree.
We were 500,000 in the red every year.
Yeah, I know that. Yes.
Mike, could I just speak to Marge's one question for a moment?
Sure.
This is Kathy. Marge, I think we still need to work, as Mike said, on framing up things so it looks more like what we need to manage, if you will. And I think I can actually, if you will, go between this committee and the rest of the council to say, well, this is how far they expect to get by such and such a date. But then if you have things framed up into the things you are actually going to investigate, the things that you think are longer term or whatever, to give us an idea of what this might look like for the immediate term and the long term. We might not need to know by the absolute end of this year, but we have to have an idea of where this is going from the standpoint of the community. We already know what kind of trouble we're in money-wise, but we're trying to find out, where does the community want to go? Where do you feel we need to go? And what kinds of pockets, if you will, would you suggest that we make where we start pulling this together? I don't think it's a drop dead date, but I think we need something substantial for us to start wrapping our heads around.
Thank you for that. I want to be respectful of time, and so it's 6:50, just turned 6:59. I lost a whole minute there when I thought I had 2 minutes. What we will do is, so Audra and I are kind of the staff behind the scenes, and so we're going to try to summarize some of the discussion based on the comments that we wrote down. We'll be able to share the slide deck that we walked through tonight, so you'll be able to have that. We're going to put that out on our webpage. We're going to have, so it'll be available to members of the public who are interested. So not only can they get the same information, but they can watch it if they so choose.
And Mike, may I also say, if any of the members of this community, of this task force want anything specifically to go to the council for questions, you can email me and I will let them know what you want to know or how you feel about something. So that it doesn't have to go to, doesn't go into the air. So feel free to email me with anything you have that you want to know more about our input.
Thank you. I appreciate that offer to be a go-between for the elected body. One of the things that we're going to talk about, and this was mentioned a couple of times, was the Maplewood Nature Center Master Plan. This was a document that was put together with a professional consultant that took a lot of volunteer hours and staff hours. And it really serves as kind of a grounding document for how big is the Nature Center? What kind of programs does it serve? What do the other nature centers in the area do that's similar and or different? And so it really does kind of help us put a competitive or a comparative kind of look. And so a couple of things. Number one, we're going to share it with you ahead of time. So you can look at it. It's probably 40-ish pages. So it's a good quality nighttime read for you. But it's also kind of a grounding piece to give a sense for what does the landscape look like for nature centers. I think Audra and Melinda will kind of walk through some of the slides. You don't want to go through every page, but kind of pull out the high level summaries. And I think though, between the financial situation and then the Maplewood Nature Center Master Plan, those two are kind of grounding documents. Then that gives us all the same base information that we can then go forward and spend the last 4 meetings creating frames and solutions and recommendations. And so I know it's a lot, but I'm really excited about the group and really grateful for all of your time and sticking with this. And Martha and Stacy and folks who chatted in, thank you. I appreciate it. We will get better at this every week. That's the one good thing. And so every time we do this, we'll get a little better. And so if there's nothing else, you can let you guys hang out as long as you want. But that's it for today. Your duties are through, but I really want to say thanks and appreciate it.
Thank you, one and all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting everybody. Sort of, right?
Yeah.
Bye, all.
I mean, I guess I don't know my smell, so.
Except those of us that just has a name and no face.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.